As far as the last 10 years, we'll say, what are some of the things that really concern you about how this government's been running this province?
Well, as I said in the debate today, I think the concerns are first and foremost a level of fiscal imprudence that I think is kind of astonishing. They're, in fiscal terms, probably the worst government that British Columbia's ever seen. Certainly, as well in terms of inequality. We're a very rich province, a diverse province with lots of access to American and Asian markets. We should be having the growth of the economy that benefits everybody. But what we do know for a fact is that over the last 12 years, BC has become one of the most unequal provinces in Canada. And that's not me saying that, the NDP saying that. That's the Toronto Dominion Bank, which said it in a 2012 study, that BC has become the most unequal province in Canada. So that's another thing that's concerning me. And certainly this, what I see is a lot of fast dealing on the environmental questions. They brought in the carbon tax, that's a good thing, but really it became a way of sort of shifting the tax arrangement, and there's been no significant progress because of that tax on environmental issues. And I don't think the whole climate change strategy that the government has pursued is very serious. When last year the Premier says that natural gas has no carbon footprint with a wave of a magic wand, well, it just suggests that you're really not very serious about what I think is one of the key moral obligations of our generation, which is to deal with climate change in a serious way.
You mentioned natural resources. We're shoveling out raw logs. We've destroyed the second biggest industry in BC, the salmon resource.
Mm-hmm.
What's your position on raw logs and on the salmon resource and fish farms?
I think on the raw logs question, I think it's shocking to me that effectively the government's been treating the forestry industry as a sunset industry. And it's not simply the fact that we're putting out raw logs that are not being processed here and there's huge value-added job loss because of that. It's also there really hasn't been a lot of reinvestment in the land base. Because of pine beetle, we all know that there's been a serious devastation of the forests. We're at record lows for the number of seedlings being planted. We're at record lows in terms of inspections of the forest. What we found out earlier in the year was that the government, because of an audit, we found out the government really doesn't have any idea of what the standing stock is in the forest. And we need to invest in the land, and we need to make sure that the forest is healthy because it is a resource, but also because it's part of the ecosystem. And I would say the same thing on the salmon question. We need to find a better way of doing this. I don't know anybody who thinks that in the long term, simply allowing for a permit for $100 a year for an open-net salmon farm to pollute that way is a sustainable way to proceed. And I think we need to take action on that. And I think Mr. Cohen has given us a good framework within which that action can take place.
What about health issues in the province and the education issues?
I certainly think on the health question, the big challenge, both in terms of the money we spend on healthcare and in terms of people's health, which is often something that's forgotten in the question of what healthcare is about, it's about healthy people. I think our response on both of those is going to be a new emphasis on home care and community care. People do better at home. We know that. A study in 2010 found that there is about 350,000 people in British Columbia who were getting acute care who did not need that. And so we need to take a look at the kinds of care that people are getting, how we support people in communities better. And I think we need to take some strategies around food, around exercise, and work with communities and municipalities around issues of fitness to make a healthier population. We do know that a lot of the morbidities that people suffer from are because of diet and because of a lack of exercise, and those are lifestyle issues, and I've dealt with those as a city councillor. And I certainly think a new emphasis on home care and community care will help us deal with those issues and certainly free up more resources for what are truly acute care needs in a hospital setting. In terms of education, certainly I think we're making that one of the central issues of our campaign. We believe that a highly trained population is not only good for BC's economy, but a well-educated population, people who have the skills to become part of family-supporting high-wage, high-value industries. That's a way to deal with social inequality. We do need to address people's inequality through some targeted movement on payments to children in poverty. But certainly the long-term solution is to give people the skills and the education they need to lift themselves up into a solid middle class. And so that gets onto that education question. And certainly at the post-secondary level, we've made specific commitments about where we're going to find money to fund about $100 million worth of unconditional student grants. But at the K-12 level as well. and even before K-12 with our Human Early Learning Education Initiative project. We need to make sure that classrooms function. It means making sure that when special needs kids are in the classroom, they're being supported by aides rather than simply being written off and creating classrooms that don't work for anybody. And we do need, I think generally speaking, to recognize the professionalism. And I think it's illustrated by a story I heard from a woman in Linmore in my riding who said that 2 years ago her son was 5 years old, so excited to go to school. And now at the age of 7, his son doesn't really want to go to school. And it's because the class has become a kind of anarchic place, mayhem, where a teacher is dealing with a variety of students with special needs who are unsupported. It doesn't work for the kids with special needs, doesn't work for the other students, and we need to make sure that system works better. And certainly for teachers, we have to stop playing political football with education. Teachers are professionals who do a good job. We need to support classroom conditions to make sure that good job can be done. And we need to stop using cheap politics of beating up on teachers as a way of sort of feathering the nest of government's political ambitions. I've been on council for almost 15 years. I've seen the full term of the BC Liberal government. And I know from my experience, because I see it in requests for support from community groups and nonprofits, I see it in requests for support from childcare groups, I see it in requests from support from affordable housing groups, that there are unmet needs in this community. And I think we need a more effective partnership with the province and between the province and municipalities rather, so that communities are not simply downloaded upon by government, because there are real human needs in our community that are going unrecognized and are really the product of 12 years of Liberal rule, and we need to change that.
Got a final word?
I urge people to get out and vote for change on May 14th, because I think, as I said inside, this is arguably the most important election in BC's history, where the contrast between a government that's out of gas and out of ideas and offers nothing but more of the same stands against a really clearly focused agenda of change for the better. And I think we need to make sure that people can change this province for the better, and you can do that by voting.